Hey guys, it's time for another Legacy Collectible YouTube video. So today I'm going to do another walk-in Wednesday. These actually came in last week and they've been sitting on my floor, but you know, I had to do that Luftwaffe Ace video and that was so much fun. I had to just bask in the glory of that gun for a little bit. But now I'm ready to talk about three guns with a story. Not as glamorous as the Ace, the Luftwaffe Ace, but this is a Sauer 38H. I'm going to talk about the story about this gun and how it came home from Germany at the end of the war. Secondly, I have a Colt Commando in absolutely pristine condition with a story behind it. Not what you would expect, but I'll tell you that story. And then thirdly, I already mentioned this one when I did a previous video. This is what many people would call a Black Widow Luger, but it is a BYF-41 Luger that was captured from a U-boat. So I will tell you that story last. What you know what that means? You got to stay through the entire video to see the money shot. Okay, let's go back to the Sauer 38H. So let's take a closer look at the gun and then I'll tell you the story. Also, I'm going to show you the capture paper that came with it. So here is the Sauer 38H. H, by the way, stands for Heer or Army, H-E-E-R. And the capture paper, you can see it was captured by Melvin OKeefe. Actually, capture is not the right word. It was purchased by Melvin. And we see two dates here. Remember when I talked about capture papers are almost always after the end of the war. Technically, this is just days before the war ended, and then this is clearly after the war was over. You see the serial number of the gun. Note the serial number, and let's take a look at the serial number. You can tell me what you see there, but you can see how somebody would mess up. Not once, but twice. See the serial number here, 468, and up here, 468. 599 is fine, by the way, but if you look at the 468, you can see how they made the mistake because it is 488. And then I'll show you a correction on that as well. So whoever wrote it the first time, they just probably copied it the second time and they got it wrong, and that's not that unusual. But before I show you any more about this gun, let me tell you that there is a subscriber to our videos that it always tells me, please remind people, don't laminate the capture papers. It's probably too late for most of them. They've already been laminated. But instead of the lamination, try this. If you want to preserve the document, get something where you put it, just put it down in there, and that way you don't hurt the original. The original is hurt in that you can never take it back again. You can never take this off without ruining the document. So if it's not already done, try not to laminate. It drives certain collectors crazy, and they tell me about it. So the 38H, we've reviewed these before. They're neat little guns, a lot like the Walther PPK. In fact, it was meant to compete with the Walther PPK. I like the takedown a lot because all you do is pull that little lever, pull that down, and the slide just comes off very easily. You can see the inside there. The firing pin is covered. There's also a matching number right here. The last three digits will match, 599. We'll put that back on. All right, I got it that time. It's real easy to get back on, but not when you see you get your gloves stuck in there. Wearing these gloves with the video makes everything a little more difficult. Also, then when it's cocked, you have what they call a decocker. Has nothing to do with male malfunction, but the decocker, let's do that again. It's cocked. You can see the trigger is cocked and then decocked. Now you can also, with a little bit of thumb strength, you can cock it using this. So your gun is not cocked and ready to go. One thumb, cocked, decocked. So pretty cool. Comes with black Bakelite grips. These are in incredible condition, both sides. They are often cracked and broken because they are very brittle, especially when you put the screw in it. You'll see cracks coming out from the screw. Here you see the firing test proof. There will also be one on the barrel. And then here you see a very simple logo, basically almost no logo at all, because this is near the end of the war. This is probably about 1944. And you see it's an Eagle F. Now that's a fairly rare variation. Most of the police guns were Eagle C, and C was just the name of the inspector, probably the first initial of his last name. And Eagle F was somebody else, but there are far fewer Eagle F. So this is a fairly rare gun. Police Eagle F, this push button here is for the magazine. And I already showed you the decocker. It does come in 7.65, also known as 32 caliber here in the United States. So let me just go even further, and I have to laugh. Well, let me turn this over. First of all, this was collected by Jason Reilly. He bought this, it looks like back in '06. Not sure where he got it from. But Jason, I know very well. Jason is a subscriber to our channel. He's also been a friend to Legacy. Actually, he was a friend of mine before Legacy even got started. He did serve in the Army and was sent to Afghanistan pretty late in his career. And he is back now and doing very well living in the United States. But I know Jason really well. And I know that if he got this gun and the serial number did not match up with the capture paper, I'm sure what he did is he called Melvin and said, "Hey Melvin, could you do me a favor? I hate to ask, but almost word for word, I'm sure that's what he said." So he, I'm sure, asked Melvin to do this sworn affidavit and had it notarized. Basically, he said this was his Model 38, Jason, you forgot the H. Model 38 having the Police Eagle F marking, and the serial number is 488599, and it was brought home from the European Theater of Operations. And then he points out that the error here on the capture paper, he made sure that he corrected the error. Way to go, Jason, for reaching back and making sure that was corrected. And basically the vet, Melvin, stated that it has been in my possession since 2006. And now it's in the possession of Legacy Collectibles. But let's take a look at the story of Melvin. So this is Jason speaking, and he says, on December 26th in 2006, I had the great pleasure of speaking to Melvin OKeefe. Mr. O'Keefe spoke to me graciously for 10 to 15 minutes, recounting stories and recollection of his military service during World War II. Mr. O'Keefe was drafted into the U.S. Army in July of 1943 and went to Camp Roberts in California for his initial training. He was trained in field artillery and assigned to the 104th Infantry Division, known as the Timberwolves. And it was with that unit that he spent the rest of his military service. In September of 1944, his unit, the Cannon Company, landed in Cherbourg, France, and began their journey across Western Europe. Mr. O'Keefe stated that the heaviest fighting he could recall occurred with his unit's participation in the reduction of the Ruhr pocket, that's the Ruhr Valley, the industrial valley in Germany, and that was in 1945. As the war was winding down, he realized he hadn't picked up any souvenirs yet, so he bought this Sauer 38H pistol, which I now own, and then he gives the serial number. He bought it from a fellow soldier for 40 bucks. Now this goes back to my video when I talked about capture papers. People talk about how they stole them, and I said at the end of the war, people had time on their hands. They were just looking for a souvenir. They won them in card games. They picked them up before they were going to be destroyed or thrown in the ocean. And this is a good example of somebody who picked up a gun. At the end of the war, Melvin is looking around for a gun. In this case, he did not win it in a card game, but instead paid 40 bucks for the pistol. The pistol was then processed by his unit, and he was given the proper paperwork, which we just looked at. Mr. O'Keefe returned to the United States with his unit in July of 1945, was given a 30-day furlough. While he was home on furlough, the war in Japan ended, and he was released from active duty soon thereafter. Mr. O'Keefe spent the next 60-plus years farming in Kansas, and when I spoke to him, he said he was semi-retired, which means he didn't raise crops anymore, but still ran livestock. So, to Mr. Melvin OKeefe, we salute you and thank you for your service. Okay, shifting gears, coming from German captured guns to American issued. This is a military service revolver, but it never went to the military, and I'll tell you that story in a little bit. But this is a Colt Commando, and I have a factory letter that comes with it that states that it was shipped in September of 1943. Let's take a closer look. Now the factory letter is somewhat unusual because it almost always will say, when it says ship to, it'll say like a Navy base, or it'll say to the U.S. military or U.S. government service. It actually, I've never seen it shipped to an actual individual. Even a commercial gun, commercial Colt, I'll see Parker's drugstore, or I'll have the name of a hardware store, True Value Hardware Store in Paoli. It'll say that's where it was shipped to. I really never see that they were shipped to a person, which makes this gun pretty interesting. First of all, it was shipped during the war. Of course, the war effort dictated that as many of these as possible were to be used for war service. Now, I know some went to the Navy, some went to the Coast Guard. It was very common for some to go to government factory facilities. So, for example, ammo depots or fuel depots, things like that. The guards there would often get a gun like this, or a Victory model, or sometimes a shotgun. We actually have a video about a trench shotgun that went to a nuclear facility that participated in the Manhattan Project, and that was also down in Tennessee. So this was delivered to the Sheriff of Nottingham. No, that was Robin Hood. That was from Robin Hood, not Robin Hood, but this went to the Sheriff of Knoxville, Tennessee, and Hazen Christ. I think that's how you pronounce it. So that, of course, begs us to look up who is Hazen Christ, and we'll do that next. You'll see that the finish is Parkerized, and so let's take a look at the gun. Again, you see a Bakelite grip, plastic type of grip, but it's more of a brown color. You see this is in absolutely beautiful condition, Colt Commando, and it comes in 38 Special. You can see the caliber there. You can open up the cylinder, and there are roll marks, but very few. The bore is mirror bore, so is hardly used. Serial number is in here and also right here. You don't need to see it, but you'll take my word for it, here and here. Easy to load, pop it back in, and it works in double action. I don't like to slam the firing mechanism, so I'll just demonstrate, or you can also cock it, and then it's a very easy trigger pull. The disadvantage of this trigger pull is it's a lot more difficult, but if you cock it, you're ready to go, and it's a very smooth action there. But you do see a proof mark right here, which is the Springfield Armory test firing proof. So just like the German pistol we looked at, they have a test fire proof. Here they have it's a flaming bomb, by the way, is the test proof. A neat little gun. Let's take a look at what Hazen was all about. So the article that I pulled up about Hazen when I Googled his name, Hazen Christ was a big man with a big heart, is the way they described him. You can also see that he was a fine Christian man because he was very involved in the First Baptist Church of Knoxville. He actually taught Sunday school to underprivileged boys that lived along the river. I have to kind of laugh in the changing times. To live along the river today, the wealthiest people have a beautiful home down overlooking the river. But back then, the people who lived along the river, those were the worst areas because they flooded quite often. And so you would build your house, it would be filled with mud, and you'd dig it all out and rebuild it. So the underprivileged kids tend to live along the river. You can see a picture of him and his family on Christmas, his wife Martha. They said she was a gregarious woman, also very giving, and his son was also Hazen Jr. Hazen Sr. played football. You can see here he's lifting weights, but Hazen Jr., interestingly, played varsity football for the University of Tennessee, so his son followed in his footsteps. Hazen got this gun, we know from the factory letter, in September of '43, but he's actually the sheriff of Knoxville from 1940 to 1946, so all during the war years. But he was able to get a war gun, which again, I'm not sure how easy that was to do, since the priority was to send them to the military, but somehow he was able to get a Colt Commando in the middle of the war. As I read about his service, there wasn't a lot about him in terms of capturing Al Capone or any wild and crazy motorcycle gangs. But instead they said he liked to drive around town in his squad car with his big Texas hat, and and he would use the loudspeaker to yell at people to not spit on the sidewalk, don't litter, and no jaywalking, please. They said he did all of this in good humor, and the people in the town, oh, by the way, he knew everybody, and so he would call them by name. So for me, he'd say, hey, Tom, get back up on the sidewalk and stop jaywalking. So he would have been a delight to have as the local sheriff. One other funny story that they tell about him, you saw a picture of his son. They said his son was getting ready to go to church one morning. He went to his closet and all his clothes were gone. So he ran downstairs and he thought he had been robbed. Said, Dad, all my clothes are gone. His dad had taken all the clothes out of his closet and given it to the boys, the underprivileged boys living down by the river. He died in 1949, so soon after he retired. Remember, he retired in 46. He died in 49 at the age of 43 due to a kidney condition. The words on his tombstone in the Ashbury Cemetery are very telling. It says, happy to live, but not afraid to die. What a great way to live your life. Okay, now for the creme de la creme, the German Luger that was taken from a U-boat. Now, a lot of you pull your hair out and go crazy because you'll say, that is no proof, because all we have is the story of the man who took this from the captain. And immediately people yell, baloney, or worse. Never happened, that never happened that way. I can tell you I have 3 guns that were captured from U-boats. The other 2 were both HSCs, and that makes sense. The captain of the U-boat, they liked the smaller weapons because they had small compartments, very small living space, and a very little closet where they could keep their gun beside their bed. So they liked the smaller guns, and both times the captain of the ship surrendered the gun to one of the people on the boat. The one time he surrendered his sidearm, and that was a U-boat that surrendered to the United States. So the custom, and this guy actually talks about it, the custom was when the U-boat surfaced, they had a prearranged number of men. Our men went over to your boat, your men went over to our boat, and then we followed you back. Our men were on their boat to make sure they didn't pull any shenanigans. Their men were on our boat, such as the captain, to kind of hold them hostage so that they can't just take off or start firing. So you just exchanged men. Now we would send over just guys that could help with the boat itself, so it was regular crew, and they would go to the armory of the boat and collect all the weapons. And so in the one case, what the captain said was, we're going to do a raffle. Everybody wanted the captain's HSC. And so they did a raffle, and the guy who won it was an ensign, which is kind of a low rank in the Navy. But it was an ensign that brought it home. And when I told the story, people said, BS, captain always surrendered it to a captain. That was not true in that case. Second case, same thing. They exchanged crews. They found, the guy found it on the U-boat. It was hidden like under a bed. He picked it up and he stuck it in his bag and never told anybody. And he brought it back. So that was case number 2, was not an officer. And case number 3 is this one. It was surrendered to a gunnery mate. And I'll tell you that story in his words. We have a sworn affidavit that says this is how it happened. And still people will say, BS. And I just want to say, what service did you perform for your country before you start calling out people who did serve their country for being liars? But let's go ahead and tell the story. So this is I mentioned, BYF 41, also known as a Black Widow. That's more of a marketing campaign. A lot of people thought that these went to the SS. In fact, they didn't. They went to the Army. They went to the Luftwaffe. In this case, about 2,500. So in 1941, about 2,500 of these went to the Navy. But we don't know which ones because the records were destroyed. And in 1940, up until 1940, the German Navy during World War II would property mark either N property mark or O property mark. Right here, you'd see an N property mark. Well, here's a picture of one here. N property mark on the front or back grip strap, or the O property mark. They also numbered the magazine, only the N property mark, but they numbered the magazine in the same way. So you would know for a fact it went to the Navy. However, they stopped doing that in 1940, at the end of 1940. And I have guns up to 1940 with those property marks. But 1941, they no longer did that. So there's no way of knowing if this went to the Navy, other than if you read the story and believe the story, it was captured from a U-boat. Let's take a closer look at the gun, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the background of this story. So I would rate this gun at about 95%, meaning about 95%, maybe 94, is covered in original blue. There are some wear spots here, and that's usually where it hit the holster. In this case, yep, there it is. It hits the holster right there, and that's a wear spot. This holster was cut, by the way. This is not happen, I wouldn't say often, but regularly I would see this is very crudely cut. Sometimes they're very nicely cut, and that's just to get the gun out faster. When it's not cut, it's kind of hard to pull it up. In fact, some people will use the lift strap to pull it up, and that's what that is. That's the lift strap to pull it up. And but with it cut, it's just real easy to grab it and pull it out. As opposed to, well, here's a picture of one with the intact leather. You can see how it would be a little bit harder with the intact holster, but in this case, basically ruins the collector value, other than this one comes with a great story of a capture from a U-boat. It does have a spare magazine. The tool pouch goes right here, but that also was removed. And the holster itself, 1942, there's the maker mark, P08, and a Waffen stamp. Again, up until 1940, they would also put a Navy marking here. It would be an Eagle M would be on this as well, but after 1940, they stopped doing that. Let's go back to the Luger itself. BYF was the factory code for Mauser. 41 is the year. You can see the nice blued finish, and all the numbers are matching. You see 59, 59, and that's because the full serial is 9159. Full serial number is here, and then also here, and under the barrel. You probably can't see all of that, but it's full number with a suffix, full number, full number. All the other small parts will just have the last two digits. You can see the last two digits here, here, and then toggle. And if you took it apart, you'd see those last two digits throughout. You can see the action on these are very good. If I take the magazine out, which, by the way, the magazine is numbered to the gun, 9159, and there is the letter suffix, which is a Q. It looks almost like an A. In fact, I think on the registration it says A, but in fact that is a Q. It also has a plus sign, which means this was originally the spare mag, but that is matching. The action, take the safety off, pull the toggle back, chamber the round. Of course, I already checked to make sure it wasn't loaded, and then fire. So that's the action of the Luger. I will be doing a video on taking these down at another point very soon. Oh, I forgot to show you the military acceptance. Our Eagle 655, and that is correct for 1941. And again, the Navy issued Lugers would not have any special markings other than the standard military acceptance proofs. So who brought this home? It was Theodore Allen Coney. He was originally from British Columbia. He was a logger, that would make sense, in British Columbia. And he first registered this soon after he picked it up, because here it is in October of '49. He registered it with his local officials, and that's what had to have happened. Remember, I just did a video, has lots of views, about Canadian guns, and you had to register them. There was a time limit, but generally, as soon as you came home from the war, what I see a lot of times is the Canadians, as soon as they settled down, bought a house or moved to their hometown, they had to go to the local official, local sheriff, chief of police, and register their gun, and that's what he did. Then later on, you can see it talks about the gun. Serial number has an A. It's actually a Q. I mentioned that. He's still a logger. But this is 1964. So probably they did a Canadian government say, just in case you didn't register your firearm, it has to be registered, or when you die, it has to be destroyed. And so maybe he forgot, or I don't know what happened, but he went down and registered it a second time. You see the 4-inch barrel, which is now verboten. They have to change out the barrel. So a lot of things going on in Canada. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch that video about Canadian guns. But this was captured by a Canadian, Theodore Allen Coney. Now, I just wanted to show you one more thing. He signed this in 2014 because I'm sure when he went to sell it, and by the way, this came to the United States. I see no import marks, so not sure how he got it here or when it came here, but in 2014, he did tell the story. It looks like the ship name was the Buckingham Able Seaman, and I'll just read the story of his capture and then tell you a little bit about the captain of the ship. So these are Theodore Coney's words, but he says, I don't remember the date. It was actually May 13th that the boat surrendered. Now remember, May 8th, Germany surrendered. It was Dönitz. Admiral Dönitz was then in charge. Hitler was dead. Dönitz was put in charge of the German military, and he surrendered on May 8th. He also ordered all U-boats to surface and surrender. This submarine is U-889. They surfaced on May 13 of 1945, were spotted by an Air Corps plane, and they radioed Nova Scotia, where the Canadian Navy was stationed, and a boat came out, the Buckingham, came out to accept their surrender. So these are his words. I don't remember the date. We now know it was May 13th. But it was very close to the end of the war when Admiral Dönitz had ordered U-boat 889 to surrender as they were low on fuel and water. An Air Force patrol spotted them and noted their position. I don't recall too much, but the routine was for them to raise a black flag of surrender. In one of the newspaper articles, it says they cruised into port carrying a black flag. I thought a white flag would be in order, but in this case, they used a black flag. So he remembers the black flag of surrender. We exchanged the usual number of crew. I talked about that. They exchanged the usual number of crew, and my job was to disable all of their big guns and to remove their small arms and throw them overboard. I gave the German officer cigarettes, and he indicated that I could keep his Luger. As I was in the gunnery branch, I returned back to my ship. We had to keep our guns trained on the submarine during the escort back to Nova Scotia. This was for official surrender. The men of the U-boat were treated well by the small village. And that's all he wrote. I think I can identify the small village from a newspaper article. This is the newspaper article that was from May 14th, and it was Shelbourne, Nova Scotia. There's not a lot of new information on here other than it does identify the U-boat as 889. They surrendered at 1:24 in the afternoon of the 13th. This article was written on the 14th. They talk about the captain of the ship, but the captain, they get his name wrong twice. They have the name spelled wrong, but they do say he's a 26-year-old native of Hamburg. And that indeed is corroborated by history, that the captain was 26 years old and he was from Hamburg. This, by the way, was his first mission in a U-boat. So the captain, Friedrich Brocker, could be pronouncing that wrong, but Brocker. Friedrich served in the Navy from 1937 to 1945. Now, he was actually in a PT boat. What we call a PT boat, JFK was on a PT boat, a patrol boat. But in the German Navy, he called it a torpedo boat, and they would be in a small craft patrolling the harbors to make sure they protected the ships that were coming in and out of harbor, keep submarines away from coming into harbor, sneaking into harbor, and sinking the warships. So he served from 37 to 45. He received 2 commendations, the Iron Cross Second Class and First Class. Not sure what acts that he did to receive them, but he did receive a promotion to captain of a submarine, which is a high honor. But in fact, about 90% of the submarines were either sunk or captured, along with their crews. So they were running low on trained men. I'm sure he did distinguish himself in the smaller ways in order to get promoted to a bigger position. And in April of 1945, he set sail from Norwegian waters to go to the United States or patrol off the coast of the United States when the war ended on May 8th, and then he surrendered on May 13th. First, let's take a look at his boat. They actually have a color picture of his boat when it surrendered. That is U-889 surrendering to the Canadian Navy. And then you see a picture of him here. And this is from a magazine that I found. You can see the crew, the first picture, the crew, they look a little, well, they look like young boys and older men, pretty disgruntled. I guess they're upset that the war ended. Second picture, you see them being processed back at port. But the last picture I wanted to show you, these are officers. It looks like 3 officers with the captain, Captain Broker, being in the middle and without arms. All 3 of them look a little bit dejected. For them, the war is over. Now, interestingly, the captain was kept in confinement till 1948, which is actually one of the longest recorded incidents of somebody staying that long. I'm not sure why. I'm sure he didn't have any military secrets to share. I don't want to say this sarcastically, but on all honesty, I read some diaries when I picked up some other U-boat captures. I found officers on board who actually said they liked it in the United States and didn't want to go back. The one guy that I'm referencing, I read his personal story. He said he loved the United States, and at some point he just kept delaying going back home. And quite honestly, it doesn't mean he hates Germany, but the economy again is poor. The city's, probably his home city was destroyed. And so they basically said, you got to go home now. So they sent him home. He had already met a girl in the United States, so as soon as he could, he got a visa to come back to the United States, and he settled, of all places, in Tennessee. I can't remember his name, but I'll look it up and get that to you. But all that is to say, the captain stayed in the United States till 1948, and then really had to go back to Germany. He died in November of 2010 at the age of 91. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you liked those 3 very divergent stories, but 3 interesting guns. This weekend, I'm heading to the Allentown Gun Show, so why don't you come along with me? I'll take my camera and show you some scenes from the Allentown Gun Show. Most of you have never been there. It's a small town, USA, but it's only an hour up the road, and they have a militaria show that is one of my favorites. So stay tuned.